Call the meeting to order and ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning and welcome to the June 12th County Commission meeting. I'd remind you to silence your cell phones. The meeting documents are on the end of the counter in the white binder next to Commissioner Bender. And if you need a listening device, Craig is in the front table here and he can help you with that. That will move on to routine business. Item number 1 is consider a motion to approve the agenda. Commissioner Barth, or excuse me, Commissioner Bennigan.
Go ahead. I'd like to make an amendment to move item number 10 behind item number 20 and before old business and new business, please.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to amend the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Now I would look for a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 2 is approve the minutes from our last commission meeting on May 29th, 2018. Is there a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 3 is bills to be paid in the amount of $2,317,856.42.
Pay the bills.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments? This is 2 weeks of bills, so it's a lot higher than normal, double, basically. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 4 is reports. Item A is the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Report for May 2018, and that is on file at the Auditor's Office. Item number 5 is personnel actions. Item A is consider a motion to approve the routine personnel actions. Is there a motion?
Second.
The motion is at second. Any questions for Carrie? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item B is recognition of significant employee anniversaries for June of 2018. Hi, Carrie.
Good morning, Carrie Deaver from Human Resources. I have a relatively short list for you this morning. We have Rhonda Larson and Doreen Jansen, both in the Sheriff's Office as correctional officers, celebrating anniversaries. Rhonda is celebrating 5 years and Doreen is celebrating 20.
Okay, thank you. And then item C is record the volunteers in the county departments for May 2018.
Another month of being near 300. We had 280 volunteers in 7 different county departments. It's incredible.
And thank you to the volunteers because it saves us an incredible amount of work. It does. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is abatements recommended for approval. We have 2 different sections there. We have veterans exceptions and then 2 other ones. So we'll do those as 2 motions. And Olivia, if you want to go with those.
Yes, the first 2 are both veterans exemptions. The first one is RDID 17878 for 2017 property taxes in the amount of $221.37, and the second is RDID 31295, 2017 property taxes in the amount of $775.20.
Look
Make
for
a motion to approve those two.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve items A and B. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, and the last 2 are for Ryan R. Rousis, both for RDID 85588, 2016 property taxes in the amount of $1,749.29, and 2017 property taxes in the amount of $1,588.96.
Is there a motion for C and D?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Olivia. Item number 7 is notices and requests. Item 8 is planning and, there are no notice and requests. Item number 8 is planning and zoning notices. There are none. Item number 9 is petition for compromise of lien. Item A is DP&O number 64895 in the amount of $45,141.99. Melinda, good morning.
Good morning, Melinda Storley, Commission Assistant. Before you is a petition to compromise 2 liens from an individual who is currently incarcerated in the Mike Dufree State Prison in Springfield, South Dakota until June 13, 2026. The petitioner is requesting that both liens be compromised and released in full with no payment. DPNO 64895 with a balance of $45,000, $141.99 in fees recorded from 2007 to 2018 represent $2,665.77 of poor relief, $3,327.80 of public defender fees, $8,247.70 of public advocate fees, $27,291.77 of court-appointed attorney fees, and $450 of payments. Included in that lien are fees and payments recorded on behalf of Lincoln County Auditor for $983.25 in poor relief, $3,369.70 in court-appointed attorney fees, and $304 in payments, leaving a balance of $4,048.95 on the Lincoln County lien. DPNO 34955, with a balance of $3,407.80 of fees recorded under an alias name by the petitioner from 1995 to 2007, represents $4,357.80 of public defender fees and $950 of payments. The petitioner was prompted to address the liens after receiving a statement from the auditor's office on December 2016. He has submitted a very large packet for your review, and his narrative primarily supports a complaint of ineffective representation from his counsel and a claim of judicial misconduct. He's prepared 3 pages for reasons to grant the petition.
Thank you, Melinda. Are there any questions for Melinda? There was an extensive amount of information in this DPNO. The applicant is not present because he is incarcerated, and so then the decision comes to the commission. So comments. Commissioner Karski.
These liens are monies that are owed back to the taxpayers of Minnehaha County, and they stay on the records virtually interest-free. I mean, it's just a debt that's owed back to the county for services that were provided. And I see no reason at this point to compromise these liens.
Additional comments?
I see he indicates he has no assets, whatever, not even a dime. I can't believe that that's true. I believe he's got a dime. And I guess I would make a motion, or I would make a suggestion to him that if he were to offer us $30,000, we could maybe settle this. Additionally, I would say, hell no, I make a motion to deny this.
I have a motion to deny. Any
I would
additional-
second that
I have
motion.
a motion and a second to deny. I would say that I appreciate the fact that he has made significant payments on this debt, and I would encourage him to continue to make payments on this debt and maybe at a future date come back. At this point, there is no real estate attached to this lien, and so there's really no reason for us to move forward since there are no incurred interest on this debt. Additional comments? And I have a motion and a second to deny. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melinda. Next, we have opportunity for public comment. This is a time when the public can speak to the commission on things that are not on today's current agenda. I have been informed that there may be a lot of people here that want to speak about the Badlands Speedway. Can I have a show of hands who may possibly want to be speaking about Badlands? Just one. There's a few. Okay. I would ask that when you come to the podium that you give your name and your address clearly, and that you limit your comments to 5 minutes. Try not to repeat what someone else said. And then I also want to let you know that there has been some misinformation out there. The county commission does not make a decision on Badlands Speedway. That goes to the planning commission, which meets once a month on a Monday night. They will make the decision, and if it's appealed out of there, then it will probably go to court. But the county commission actually has no action on it at all. We are glad to listen to your comments. Those comments will probably go back to the planning meeting that meets on a Monday night, and I can't even tell you. Scott's here, he could tell you what night that is. So, but with that, we'll go forward. Like I said, give your name and your address, limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, and please try not to repeat comments. So,
Good morning. I'm Leroy Matthew. I live at 5806 West Parakeet Street. Been there for several years. I'm also was the superintendent at VP 6 out at Mari Car, which was in the same room as 312. Friday night, I saw our county auditor tarred and feather over something that was pretty small, but it wasn't his responsibility to take care of that. I found out a long time ago, and I took on the job of being the superintendent. It's the same as being a foreman on a job site. You're given something to do, and it's your job to take care of it. Some of you are not aware that there's a small block that moved into Sioux Falls on the west side of town that ended up, we're actually in VP 6, which is District, excuse me, District 11, where 312 is District 9. I am a resident of the 312, so therefore it takes 2 ballots. This started back in 2014 when they were annexed into the city. So we ended up with someone getting the wrong ballot. That was because they said they didn't have the right ballot, which I do not know if there was or not in that box, but I do know that there was 2 people out there that I know for a fact. One has been in that same precinct working since at least 8 or 10, and the one gal I know worked 16 elections, which had to split 2 ballots out there. Nothing was said at the beginning, but I also understand at 8:15, Mr. Millich came in and told the superintendent that he had the wrong ballot. She said, "I don't have one." Well, that's not true. Right across the room, there was 200 ballots for that district. Nothing was said. None of the staff said anything. Her workers never said anything. Then at 1 o'clock, phone rings and somebody else was saying they had the wrong ballot. Then she got on the phone and said, "I need to have ballots brought out." I said, "You don't need to have anything brought out. I have 50 right here you can have. We're not going to use them all. Why have somebody come across?" Twice I said that, and twice she still made it a point to have somebody bring out ballots. Now, I'm not too sure why that would be done. I've never seen the gal before, but to me, it's either totally incompetent or it was done intentionally. And as far as Commissioner Barth, I don't know why you jumped all over something that was a Republican issue when you're a Democrat. Like I said, to me, as an independent, does it make any difference to me if it's a Republican issue or a Democrat or a Libertarian? It was a pretty trivial little deal. An anthill was tried to be made into a mountain hill. I was very disgusted with that, and I think that as time goes by, you would sit there and find out that most all of us that are superintendents, and they're over 70, take our job very seriously. And yes, once in a while, we are human. We make a mistake. So therefore, I think somebody should be forgiven, but I'll guarantee you one thing. The mistake was not made by Bob Litz. It was made by that superintendent of 312. There was absolutely no reason it had to be done. It's all she had to do was communicate with her staff, even if she wasn't aware of it, which she should have been, that there was 2 ballots to be done. It made no difference in the election as far as I know, and I know that Wayne Steinhauer came in and he sat there and he was a little upset, and I said, "Wayne, I don't think there's going to be a close enough vote to where you're going to have to go back and address this." And therefore I was right. So I honestly do believe that it was politically motivated. And as far as Commissioner Barth, I'm going to ask you, could you apologize for jumping the gun and getting all over somebody? Or if not, are you going to admit it was a political ploy?
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Matthew. Next person who would like to speak, remember to give your name and address and limit your comments.
Sure, Lanny Oranger, 2209 South Coppercrest Trail, Sioux Falls. First of all, I just want to thank you for allowing some of us to speak, even though we acknowledge that what you just said, Cindy, that
Yeah.
you guys don't get to make the decision.
No.
But I also know that there was one of you that kind of started this whole process by making comments to the media that got out, that got to the rest of us, et cetera. So even though you can't control how things are decided, it was made public by one of the commissioners.
Thank you.
I also want to acknowledge that I'm an architect, so I fully appreciate the zoning ordinance, first and foremost. Also, I'm here to speak on behalf of taxpayers of Minnehaha County, which I'm one of, race fans, Minnehaha County, which I'm one of, and not specifically on behalf of Chuck Brennan. I've been a race fan for a long time, been a taxpayer for a long time. I'm familiar with the ordinance. I'm familiar with Scott. I've dealt with Scott many times. And I think it's very, very sad that a letter was written on June 6th and not on May 6th. Any of us that have property, if our property becomes dilapidated, we get a notice. Gives us 30 days to come into compliance. We get a notice if there's, out in the county, if there's abandoned vehicles sitting that are stacking up, you give them a notice. You give them a year to clean it up, whatever the case might be. In this situation, it was waited until it was determined. It was after what Scott or others have determined is discontinued operation, and then a letter was written. I believe, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that every license that's required to operate that facility was maintained. Fees were paid for liquor license, fees were paid for a health department if it was required. The property was maintained in pristine condition. It was very clearly exposed to everybody that this was an operational facility, race ready. The sign says race ready. The unfortunate fact that there wasn't a race doesn't make it an operational facility, in my opinion. Also, it's very short-sighted to potentially shut down a very functioning tax revenue generating facility for the county, for the state. The taxes don't go to the city of Brandon, but the residual effects go to the city of Brandon. They go to the city of Sioux Falls. I was in Jackson, Minnesota over the weekend. Read the paper on Thursday. If any of you guys read the Argus later, for 20 miles outside of the city of Jackson, there was no camping spaces. There was no hotel spaces. The effects of having a facility like that are immense. And because a letter was failed to be written, or even a courtesy telephone call was failed to be made, there's a potential that this racetrack will be gone forever. Going in front of the planning commission is not just filling out a petition. You go in front of a planning commission, you have to explain to them what your hardship is. You have to deal with the potential neighbors. I know 2 years ago when we did the project out there and I was involved in it, we had a neighborhood meeting, or we at least sent letters out. Very few neighbors within the 500 feet, or I think we even went out to a mile, had any negative things to say. But that's not to say that that won't happen now because of some of the publicity that's happened over the last couple of years.
Gotta give you one more minute, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just, again, hope that more sensible minds can prevail in this situation because it's a true asset to our community, and it'd be really, really sad if it were lost.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person.
Hello, my name is Rod Pattison, 2105 East Allen Drive, Sioux Falls. A lifelong member of the racing family, former announcer and broadcaster at Houston Speedway, and the chairperson of the Houston Speedway Hall of Fame Committee. I'm here today to offer a few short words and ask you and the Zoning and Planning Commission to consider the status of Houston Speedway. From its humble beginnings in 1954, when Till Houston built the racetrack with his bare hands, until today, Houston Speedway has grown into an international brand name and a place that is recognizable to fans all around the world. The history of Houston is unlike any place, and the stories to be told are endless. It is a place for people of all types to come and forget about life for a while. Houston Speedway is not just a dirt track, it's a sanctuary for thousands of people to unite as a family and enjoy this sport that we so dearly love. It is a place that hundreds of thousands of fans have seen the best of our sport, and we've also seen the worst of our sport. The memories, experiences, and friendships made because of Houston Speedway is immeasurable. Aside from the emotional ties that thousands of people have with Houston Speedway, it's the economic impact the track has made and hopefully will continue to make in the future. When people hear fighter jets fly over the Sioux Falls area, it's loud, but it's the sound of freedom. When you hear the roar of race cars from Houston Speedway, sure, it's loud, but it's the sound of money being put into the economy through tax dollars. Every lap turned at Houston Speedway is a little less burden on residents of Brandon and Minnehaha County. With the visitors that parade into town for an event, it's tax dollars being paid to us by people from Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, California, Texas, Ohio, Oklahoma, and beyond. Fans from Canada and as far away as Australia and New Zealand have turned the gates as fans of racing at Houston Speedway, and they've purchased goods and services in the Brandon and Sioux Falls communities. In conclusion, I would ask of you, the County Commission, the Planning and Zoning Committee, and the homeowners near Houston Speedway to work with current and hopefully new ownership to keep this track alive. People who hunt have millions of places to hunt. People who fish have millions of places to fish, but as race fans have very few places to enjoy our passion. There are 8,760 hours in a calendar year. Us racing family members are asking for less than 100 of those hours a year to keep this tragic situation from turning fatal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for letting us be here. My name is Mary Niedringhaus, and I live at 48232 263rd Street in Brandon. I've lived in Brandon for 49 years, 7 in town, and the rest out in the country about 1.5 miles from Houston. First of all, I am not opposed to racing. I am opposed to the noise and the way that the racetrack has been run the last few years. When Rubens ran the racetrack, it was Sunday night, and it was over by 10 or 10:30. Since the change was made, you never knew really what nights there were going to be races. We literally are not able to be out in our backyard and enjoy our home on race nights. And it's not just when the race starts, it's the revving up of motors and the noise before that. I know of nobody that doesn't, and I know my friends are probably different than some of the others, but people complain about it. Oh, it's race night. And it just seems like it could be controlled a bit more, and that they could have limited hours. I just feel that it's a violation of the noise policy, the ordinance, and I would just appreciate more consideration as to the community. I know that there is more than just financial input. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Niederhaus. And just so the audience knows, we do not have a noise ordinance in Minnehaha County. They maybe have one in Sioux Falls, but we don't have one in the rural county. So, next person. Is anyone else that wants to speak?
Greetings, Commissioner, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tom Wertzma. I live at 26299 McCarty Road in Brandon. Over the course of the past year, I've discussed the track situation with several neighbors and friends in the Brandon Valley area. It's clear to me everyone supports the track the track that has brought Brandon revenue and identity and entertainment in the past several decades. However, these conversations were typically in the context of the track being Huset's. Since new ownership took over, the events have changed. It seems the noise has increased, the events have nearly doubled, and activities continue through midnight. This has created a frustration and a longing for the format in which Huset's operated. Generally speaking, races at Huset's were held on Sunday nights, were not as loud, finished earlier, and rock concerts didn't seem to be nearly as intrusive to the neighborhood. These practices highlight how Huset's was a good neighbor to the community, including families and children with earlier bedtimes, working people who need quiet nights of rest, and others just wanting a peaceful evening. I want to express support for the racetrack, and I want to express support for a conditional use permit. This will allow Brandon Valley residents input as to how the track should operate in order to be a good neighbor as the population grows around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wertzma. Additional comments?
Dennis Fester, 1710 North Tahoe Trail. I'm originally from South Dakota, Sioux Falls. Moved to Florida, 87. I've come back to Sioux Falls mainly for racing. I moved into Sioux Falls 2 years ago. And I'm here to represent the race fans of South Dakota. And if we don't have races in South Dakota, I'm going back to Florida year-round. So I would really like, I'm paying $2,400 a year property tax in Sioux Falls. And I'm here to represent all the race fans of South Dakota, not Mr. Brennan. Because I think he's really done a disservice to racing fans in general. And that's
Thank you for your
just to
comments.
show my support.
I think we had somebody else that wanted to speak. A couple more.
Hi, Paul Van Vorn, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 1515 South Suburban. I live on the east side of Sioux Falls. I started out as a fan when I was a little kid. Through the years, I've built friendships and relations with people at the racetrack. I've become a racer. I race cars out there. I've been a car owner. My son has raced out there. I've towed out there. I helped Jay Major train on race cars and how to deal with certain situations. I've been lucky enough to be a mechanic on sprint cars for years. Worked with World of Outlaws, which is a traveling organization. And the economic impact, I think, is not fully comprehended at this point. The city of Brandon not only is affected, the city of Sioux Falls is affected, the county is affected, the state is affected, as well as tri-state area. There's over 700 dirt tracks in the United States. And Houston's having a 60-year history, has built a reputation as being one of the best. I think letting it go will be a detriment to not every race fan, but there are all people across the country. They've come here from everywhere. I've been fortunate enough to been at about 145 different racetracks, both rural and in town. I do think that some of these issues that have been brought up can be addressed with curfews, maybe starting the races earlier, getting over earlier. Knoxville, for example, they have to have mufflers to quiet the noise down a little bit. That can be addressed, I think. I know that many sprint car owners would more than be happy to do that. The facility itself has changed hands. Unfortunately, the last couple of years, maybe not in the favor of the racing community, but it is my understanding that the track is for sale, and my hope is that the new owner will work with the surrounding area and be more of a compliant, friendly owner or owners. I was looking at the GIS map earlier, and I understand from the ordinance that you have to notify those within a half mile of a racetrack, of which, from looking at the map, would be less than maybe 15 people or 15 property owners. I know there's no noise ordinance in the county, but it does affect Brandon. I hear the race motors when a candidate's in the races. I hear them on the east side of Sioux Falls, so noise does travel. But you know what? So does smell. Look at the feedlots in the county. Look at the cattle feedlots. The smell travels 24/7. The racetrack is open 1, maybe 2 nights a week. And like Rod said earlier, less than 100 hours will it be affected, not 24/7 like a feedlot or confinement. So my hope is that the racing community will come together and we can get this done. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Additional comments? I think I still saw somebody else. Greg Gunderson. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Gunderson.
Hello, Todd Boots, 610 North Christine, T, South Dakota. I know pretty much everybody said most of what I'm going to say, so I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm here in support of the racetrack. I hope something can be worked out to keep it going. There's an economic impact, and a lot of race fans here are feeling it. We're spending our money other places. I'll travel to Knoxville, Iowa, Jackson, Minnesota, all those places to spend dollars that would be spent in Brandon, South Dakota. Yes, I only live in T, but when we go to the races, we usually support a business there and eat and stuff. But other than the economic impact, I'd like to talk about the family impact. This is what I've did most of my life growing up. 35 plus years I've went to the races. I've made my daughter a race fan. And obviously, as it continues on, hopefully it keeps going on as a family sport. That's the thing I want to talk about is family. There's so many families. That's what they do. And right now, that has kind of been taken away from us for the last 2 years. So again, I just hope something will be worked out and you support the racetrack. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boots.
Marty Grilly, 311 North La Mesa Drive, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Pretty much everything that I was going to say has already been covered, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'm a race car owner, a driver, a fan, a concert goer. Been going to the races there for, well, I've lived here for about 28 years now. And not only is the financial impact with the city of Brandon, Sioux Falls, the county, that's obvious. I was going to bring up the family traditions, which was just brought up. There's thousands of families that Huset's and Badlands Speedway has become a tradition once a week throughout the summer. I would hate to see that go. Over the past couple of years, I know there's been a lot of controversy with the present owner of the track. And like him or not, or what has been done at the track, that guy has sunk millions of dollars into that track and made it one of the nicest facilities in the country, not only for races, but for concerts and other outdoor activities. So we're not only focusing on just racing, we're talking about an overall spectrum of entertainment that could possibly go away. And I'm hoping that you guys will take into account not only the racing aspect of it, but the concerts and the money, the family traditions, entertainment, giving people something to do besides going out and getting in trouble on the weekends. And that's, I guess, about all I have to say. Thank you.
Additional comments?
Hi, Jamie Azier, 25968 476th Avenue. I honestly didn't plan on talking about this Badlands issue, but listening to all my friends out here, everybody that stood up and talked, I know, and I agree. Whether we like the owner of that racetrack or not, that's irrelevant at this point. There's a lot of things to consider. First off, I've been out there 41 years, probably longer than anybody out here. And because of that racetrack, as my team travels across the country, Minnehaha County, Brandon, South Dakota, Sioux Falls is nationally known for what that track has offered my service and my family. And we have taken that every place we go. And that's part of the family tradition that we talked about, you know. And I totally understand that a year went by and no race was ran. And I get all that, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus for writing a letter or not writing a letter. That's not what this is about. But I think now that it has come to the forefront, you know, the issues that some of the Brandon residents have, they're real. You know, we can say, well, you move there, and it's kind of like living by an airport. You move by an airport, expecting a plane to land. I get all that. But there's also things that we can do right now to make things better. I've been contacted by a lot of folks who were going to come out and bid on this racetrack, asking whether or not we'd be out there, and we've had our discussions. But I can tell you this, that the people that are going to buy this racetrack are race fans by the most part. These are people that care about the racing community and care about the community that they're going to be moving into. For two reasons. They love racing, and if they don't have a successful event, they're not going to make any money. So it's got to be a holistic thing for these people. The only thing I would ask is, if it's even possible now, is the person who wrote that letter contact the people he wrote it to and get those folks in a room along with the people that have issues with this noise and so forth, and let's get this figured out. As they were saying, Knoxville is right in the middle of their town, and they simply put mufflers on their vehicles. And that helps. It's still loud, but it does help with that noise that travels and so forth. And I think that there is solutions to this. I think losing that racetrack, and I think it'll go back to Houston. I don't think anybody here will deny that that track will be Houston Speedway again. You're right, for 2 years it wasn't the same as what we knew, but it can go back to that, and it can even be better. So I think without having to go through planning and all this kind of thing and spend months and months, every day that goes by, I can promise you that the owner of that racetrack is just saying, the heck with it, I'm going to plant daisies out here, and I'm not going to fight this anymore. And I think we need to do what we can do to try and salvage what we can salvage out there. So thank you, and I hope we can get this worked out.
Thank you for your comments.
Randy Jameson, 25706 Packard Lane, Renner, South Dakota. I am very fortunate to live where I live. I live right next to the Sioux River, and in the wintertime, I'll be out doing things or in my yard, and I will hear snowmobiles and four-wheelers and people buzzing up and down the river right out my back door. And yeah, I can hear them from 3 miles away. And I think, you know, that's kind of annoying, but then I think, wow, how fortunate to watch all those kids go by there having fun. It's great that they have a place to do something like that. And I'm happy about that. I'm also the contractor that worked for the current owner that did all the improvements to Houston Speedway. I don't know if people realize that he spent approximately $7 million with me on what he improved out at that racetrack. I was not the biggest race fan. I mean, I went to races before, but I wasn't anything like this guy. But, and I've been to several racetracks since then. And I'm very proud of that racetrack. I'm not particularly happy with how it was managed or ran. But I think that it is by far one of the nicest racetracks in the country. And I think you guys are getting a small sampling of how loyal these guys are. And that is one of the current owners can't quite get his arms around how much people appreciate racing. To him, it was more about events and concerts. But these guys are serious about the racing. And also as a contractor, going through conditional uses is the biggest, to have people that I'm sure you know the word NIMBY, what that means. They're everywhere, and they seem to have time to come into these meetings and express their concerns where the other people just kind of just assume it will be taken care of. Putting limitations on what is happening at that racetrack that is by far one of the favorite racetracks for cars to be on because of the speed, because of the banking, and the crowd base. It's a shame that something like this is even being talked about. I am a sprint car owner, and my car has sat since the last race at that racetrack. There's nowhere I want that car to race other than there, and it's in storage waiting for it to open. And had somebody not wanted to, it appears as though someone just wanted to maybe get one more over on Chuck, is what it really seems like. That if they just would have been quiet for possibly 30 more days, this whole thing would have went away with the new owner, that I think we'll get it, how important it is to keep a lot of people happy. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson. Still got a couple more.
I'm Pastor Dennis Bossman, 1030 East Heatherwood in Brandon. I've been going to this racetrack since I was a little kid when they started out in the early 50s. I was out there when there was just nothing but the rolling hills, and my brother and I would roll down that hill. And today I am privileged to know that since then I've seen that track grow, and I've had the privilege to offer the opening prayer before the races during the last 15 years. And I've always been proud of the fact that here is a place that always begins with prayer. No race ever starts without prayer. No race ever starts without our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. And all of these people standing as a family, enjoying a wonderful sport. And I've shed tears over the fact that we have lost it. But I also have the prayer and the hope that we will have racing again because of wonderful people who support this magnificent sport. I thank you for the time, and do anything you can to encourage the Zoning Commission to let it keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Additional comments? Any other public comments besides the racetrack? I thank you all for coming and taking time off from work or whatever you were doing this morning to come and speak on behalf of it. I don't know exactly the date. It's towards the end of June. I would encourage you, as Mr. Mazur said, to work together and bring a proposal maybe to the Planning Commission. If you can work together, you maybe can get through this quicker than going meeting after meeting. I think you can find a solution. I hope you can. It sounds like there's a lot of people here that want to work together, and we appreciate the time that you've taken to come and speak to us this morning. So, with that, we will move on to our regular business meeting. Item number 11 is a public hearing to consider special events, malt beverage, and on-sale wine retail license for KAK, also known as K Restaurant, for an event on August 16, 2018 at the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum. Olivia?
Yes, there will be a chamber mixer party at the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum on August 16th, and KAK Inc. has applied for, I believe it was 2 licenses, yes. One for malt beverage and one for wine to sell during the event. And I have received no concerns or complaints from State's Attorney, Planning and Zoning, or the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, any questions for Olivia?
Make a motion to approve the special event beverage deals there.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, public comment. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that wants to speak for or against this liquor license? And seeing no one move, I have a motion, a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 12 is also a public hearing to consider the proposed revisions of the Minnehaha County Ground Ambulance Ordinance. Linda Young. Good morning, Lynn.
Commissioners, Linda Young, Emergency Management. Okay, just let me grab my notes here. Okay, Commissioners, as you know, the county's had an EMS ordinance for many years, since approximately 2001. The county ambulance ordinance spells out the expectations of the county EMS system, the first responders within the system, Metro Communications, and all those to ensure that we have a quality system within the county. In the fall of 2016, the Commission had additional discussions on how to improve the county ambulance system, so they contracted with Fitch and Associates for an EMS study. Excuse me. Fitch returned a report with about 26 recommendations in the spring of 2017. And after that, the county established several working groups to implement the ordinance for the future, and that's why we're here today. those working groups included governance, training, patient records, medical board, and were made up and comprised of members within the system and then other members, including the county commission and members from the cities in which they operate. The working groups started working in the spring of 17 and have continued their work up until this date. The goal of the working groups was to establish, or at least the governance group was to establish a new ordinance for the start of 2019. The draft ordinance is in front of you. It is a combination of both the Fitch report, the current ordinance that the county had, state statute, and then recommendations made by the EMS governance board. So if you choose to look at the ordinance, you'll see that it's much different in format than the other one. I've included within your budget, or excuse me, budget's later, within your packet, some of the significant changes. As you'll note, in Article 1 of the ordinance, there really wasn't anything significant. In Article 2, we tried to follow state and national standards when referencing, or they were referenced in our ordinance, and then we added the definition for emergency medical services division, which is a significant change in the proposed ordinance. So that division would be underneath the county emergency management office. We also enhanced the definition of the county medical director and use state statute once again to reference what that position would be. In Article 3, a change that was made there is other providers not based in Minnehaha County So it allows, Article 3 clearly allows other providers not based in Minnehaha County to transport patients from Minnehaha County to other destinations outside the county, but does not, as we see it, allow them to maintain a physical presence in Minnehaha County to do that if they're not licensed. Article 4, as you recall, we have within the ordinance the primary service areas, and that's an attachment, your map. The primary services are a part of the licensure process, so any service that chooses would apply for a primary service area within the ordinance, and they'd be the primary agency responding to citizen calls in those areas. This map was developed by the current stakeholders a couple of years ago based on the request from the county commission, and there was no changes in this current ordinance to that actual response area, or to those PSA maps. Article 5, the section includes method for dispatching mutual aid. Our current ordinance has a mutual aid requirement, and one of the things that we do within mutual aid is we make them sign the mutual aid agreement before they are actually issued a license. It's just something that's good for the community, good for the citizens, and good for the response system that we have. The thing that changed is previously they were dispatched via lines and everything, predetermined lines similar to the ones you saw on the map. What we're doing now is we're using GPS, road closure information, out-of-service information. All of that is added into the CAD system. As you know, the county and the city and Metro Communications just purchased a new CAD system that allowed us to enhance. So in the past, it might be that Garrettson always responded to a certain area for mutual aid. Now it reverts back to who's the closest, who's the best for the patient at that time, depending on other conditions that we may not know that are out there. Article 6 talks about special events within the county. Article 7 talks about how we're going to measure response times. Once again, we reference state statute and South Dakota administrative rules. If you recall, one of the things that the Fitch study indicated is we needed to measure response times. However, our response times that we were measuring were pretty conflictive with state statute. So instead of being conflicted in those areas, what we elected to do was, and Dr. Luther can talk about this a little later, is if you are the primary service area of number 3, we can't make you get to your patient faster because of geographical conditions. But what we can do is, based on the type of call and how severe that call is coded within the PSAP and everything, we can say that if you're going to a heart attack or if you're going to a childbirth or a stroke or anything, that we are going to measure you from the time you get on scene until the time you leave to ensure that those are consistent with national standards and national treatment protocols. So those are the things that we'll be measuring for time now. Article 8, this section allows the EMS division to automatically authorize a 2 years extension to each license. So currently the license period is for 2 years, and then they reapply to the county after that. This one would give the EMS division the authority to authorize a 2-year extension. Of course, if that's chosen, that would be in consultation with the medical director and then the liaison within my office to do that, and then most likely the full commission, would be aware that we're automatically going to do that. And I guess the way I would operate in that is, if one commissioner said, hey, this isn't the right thing to do, we bring it back to the entire group. But that would be an area that is puts more authority in my office, and it's something that you could certainly change. 9 and 10, there are no significant changes within those articles. 11, one of the things that we continue to have discussion on is HIPAA and how that we gather all of this information now that we're going to gather more, especially on the ALS side, and review that. So the agreement is we're going to put in a business associates agreement, which is a standard document, so that both agency, both the county and our providers understand what we're going to be doing with that patient information, and that we remain compliant with how we view those HIPAA requirements at the state and federal level. So Article 12 outlines a county medical director who may oversee the entire system, requires advanced life care providers to work with one of the county licensed services, and this is one of the big outcomes of the Fitch report. This will really move us towards an entire system. So the first part of that is we do, and some of the fire rescue agencies have some folks that are advanced care providers. Well, if you're an advanced care provider in Baltic or Colton or Hartford and you start advanced care methods, because of our current system, there's really no way to track that through the quality assurance process. What we're asking those providers to do now is Hartford and Humboldt, for example, they would work much more closely so that if Hartford's doing advanced care procedures, all of that is tracked through the quality assurance process so that we can ensure the patient's treated properly, and then bring that on the back end. So if there is any problems in treatment, we can use the quality assurance process to enhance them for any future patient contacts. The other part is the goal of the system, quote, the system will to ensure that anyone that has a license in 1 through 6 are really all using the same protocols, the same treatment methods, and all of those things, because a lot of their workforce works at multiple areas, and we want to have a common set of treatment protocols, and that's really what this does, and will allow the medical director to work through that. Article 13, just the need for backgrounds. We have a current background screening process that we have. We want to ensure that anyone that has a service, whether it's private, non-for-profit, for-profit, any of those are following our backgrounds. It's important for the patients, it's important for the other first responders that are there, and it's just a hallmark and a staple of a good quality system, and that's what we're trying to do. Article 14 requires 2 EMTs. Once again, this is a little different than state statute. State statute a couple years ago changed to 1 EMT and a other trained provider as established by the South Dakota Department of Health. We think that based on the population, the call severity, and just needing to be better in Minnehaha County, that we want to have 2 EMTs in the back of or in our vehicles when transporting in all locations. So 15, once again, references current rules for the state of South Dakota. Article 16, once again, creates the EMS division, was recommended by the Fitch report, and then this also allows for the creation of operational procedures to enhance the system without changing the ordinance. So as we would see that is there's a lot of times where we might need to change something minor within the system. Instead of bringing back a minor change, why can't we just have this real similar to to administrative rules, where the group of us, the EMS governance group, sits down and says, listen, this is the way we need to do it now. It doesn't rise to the level of an ordinance change, but it does need to be something that we agree upon. Article 17, once again, no significant changes. 18, there were some changes to comply with state statute. And then 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23 were all recommendations by the state's attorney's office. So they were, invaluable to this process. And if there's any questions on any of those changes, I'd be happy to answer them here. But if not, and I'll keep up with the briefing. So, so after the review of the ordinance, the next step in the process obviously is to approve the ordinance. The county will implement any changes within the next application period, which will be in the next several weeks, that we would send out applications for the response areas. And then the county will award licenses for the areas in the late fall. So any services that would apply, they would get their notice of that they've been accepted to respond to 1 through 6 in late fall. And then the ordinance would be fully operational on January 1st, 2019, if there's any changes that are made based on the discussions here today. So that being said, I would answer any questions or turn it over to Dr. Luther. He may have some comments, and then it's your public hearing, Commissioner.
Any questions for Lynn at this point? Okay.
If I could, just one. Article 3, it says allows other providers not based in Minnehaha County to transport patients from the county to destinations outside the county.
Yep.
But when I go back to like 21, 22, 23, and I'm sorry for not asking you this so you can prepare for this, Lynn, but we still expect them to comply with all of the requirements that we have within the ordinance?
I'm looking at Maggie here. So what we wanted, number one, is you have to, if you're in Minnehaha County, our current ordinance doesn't allow anyone to come in outside the geographical, or our current ordinance doesn't allow you to come in and just plop an ambulance service down and start running EMS calls. But we do recognize that if you base in Lincoln County or Turner County or anything, and this is what happens every day, is, the Lennox ambulance might come into Sioux Falls and get a patient out of the hospital and bring them back to the nursing home. That certainly is okay, and we can't prevent that because the commission, can't make rules for everybody outside our jurisdictional boundaries. So as far as them wanting us, yeah, I mean, we'd like to see them follow the rules so that's consistent with us, but I don't think there's any way that we can force them because they don't have a county license.
So they're not held to the same treatment protocols, metrics, standards that
I mean, unless there's a way, I don't think, and we had extensive discussions, that there's a way that we can hold outside agencies to our things.
but they wouldn't count against the things that you do, I guess, would be
No.
my concern that,
And that's really where we hope that the state of South Dakota steps up to the plate and enforces, their rules and regulations and the Office of Rural Health and those things. There are additional statutes that they have to abide by, and that's why we try to reference as much as we could that we want state statute to be looked at within our ordinance also. So we want to marry them together as much as we can, except in a couple specific areas. And the one specific area, once again, is a lot of other counties don't regulate response areas because they don't have multiple agencies, requesting in there. And then the other thing is we also changed the 2 EMT rule. Other parts of South Dakota, and we have those same workforce issues, but other parts of South Dakota are much more difficult just finding people on a regular basis to do that. We don't think we're here yet, and that's where the stakeholder group with the EMS government said, no, we do want to have 2 EMTs within it, so.
Okay, I think that answers my question, thank you.
Additional
Thank you,
questions for Lynn? Okay, this is a public hearing, and so we would take from proponents at this point, and I think Dr. Luther, maybe, I'm assuming one of them, give your name and your address, and if you'd like to speak in favor of the ordinance, I would take your comments now.
Good morning, Commission. Dr. Jeff Luther, your current Quality Assurance Director for our EMS system. I guess I'd first like to just start off with commenting that I was involved in the original ordinance for EMS. At that time, there was probably 8 to 10 different types of items that we needed to address at that point. Since then, there's been so much change in not only the care delivery, but also in the administrative side of EMS, including who does what. Scopes of practices have changed since then. But with this recent decision to change, or at least look at what we could do and improve EMS in the community, has really been impressive to me. What we did back then, not discounting those resources and time and effort that was put into to make that ordinance, compared to what it is now, these resources are phenomenal. The time, the contribution from a lot of different people, including the users, the commission, the state's attorney's office, everything, to try and look at a system based upon some recommendations from the Fitch study to provide a new system, if you will, that needs to address a lot of immediate concerns that I had. One was quality assurance, and how do we measure those metrics consistently, and then provide reporting for quality that's timely and consistent. So that was one of the most impressive things that I noted with this. When we first looked at it, I thought the task would be really difficult. I mean, like alphabetizing a bowl of noodles. But we had enough folks together that had good input, that we were able to meet and come up with a good plan over several different types of work groups. Collectively, I think there's been a wealth of recommendations that, if put into place, will really enhance EMS care in our county. Some of the things, without going into much of a granular level at this point, is that if we look at fractile times, which was something that's difficult for all of us to kind of understand, particularly in rural communities where you've got wildlife interference, we've got environmental, weather, all those sorts of things, and just getting to the patient. But we do know that care delivery, once at the patient's side, is very important. So we're hoping that we'll be able to have a unified set of treatment protocols, so that if ambulance A responds to a particular call type, I know through the review process, the care expectations through protocols will be the same if ambulance B did that. Timings may be a little different, but the scene time with the patient should be consistent, and we now should be able to measure that. Back then, we really didn't have a good way of doing it, but other than doing it longhand. Now we have some electronic abilities where we can do it almost real time, but as soon as a report is in, we'll be able to do that. Other enhancements that have come along the way with some of the changes has been putting road deputies as EMTs. So we've got some good response times there to start this necessary care delivery immediately. And so I think looking at all things combined, it's also a more of a living system that will be able to address changes as we see them. I've always wanted to have somebody, and when I review EMS in the city, I answer to a medical board, or if we make any changes of substance with regard to protocols or policy, those things go through two different boards. Here, we have a preliminary set of individuals in the medical community that will help us out with this to establish things, still respecting each individual service's medical director. Decisions will have to be ran through them as well. I think we have the ability to have a centralized area to retrieve these records, pull the information, again, compliant to HIPAA and privacy issues, and then we can filter through the necessary quality performance indicators that I need to report back to you that the citizens are getting high quality care. So I'm excited about it. If you have any particular questions, I'll do as best I can to address those.
Thank you, Dr. Luther. Are there any questions for Dr. Luther at this point? Okay. Again, this is a public comment, or excuse me, a public hearing. Is there anyone else that wants to speak in favor of this ordinance? Is there anyone who wants to speak against this ordinance? All right, seeing none. Oh, excuse me, I have one against the Give your name and your address, please.
Rob Singer, 126 South Shore Drive, Minus, South Dakota. I didn't want to get up for or against, but so I'm kind of stuck
You're
in the middle.
middle. Okay.
Yep. So my name is Rob Singer, 126 South Shore Drive, Minus, South Dakota. I'm a paramedic with Midwest Medical Transport Company. I'm a regional manager. So first and foremost, I'm a patient care advocate, and I completely agree with everything in this ordinance and how it went about and the Fitch report and I commend you for really having the passion and caring about the community and setting the bar higher. And I wish we could do this across the state. My background, been in EMS since '91. Used to get out of high school to go on ambulance calls, so it's a passion to me, and this is something that I know it is to them as well. So everything that's in this ordinance, I agree with. One of the things we did open up a location with our company in Lincoln County. We're very close by. We're in T. And so with our growth, our company, we were a mom and pop operation for about 30 years. We've expanded across the U.S. and we're very successful at what we do because we truly put the patient's needs first. So when we opened our location in T, we weren't able to participate. This is just recently, we opened 3 weeks ago, I believe. And we weren't able to participate in this process, and we would have loved the opportunity to be licensed and to participate and be involved in a collaborative effort because we are so close, and we are an ALS service that has EMTs, paramedics, in advanced skills that a lot of things that we can do that some other services can't. But because we are a career service, we do have a lot of resources. We have locations nearby in Sioux City, in Sheldon, Iowa. We have several ambulances there. We have a location in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And we just would like the opportunity to come in and to work with these stakeholders to allow us to help out in the time of need. We understand patient care. We get it. We're all on board on that. Patient care comes first, but the main thing is when there's a 911 call, mutual aid agreement would be a nice option. We would be able to assist. We're so close by. We're able to provide critical care transports. We're able to provide non-emergent transports. We also do a wheelchair type service, paratransit. And so we just think that because we are the new kids on the block, we'd like to be involved and work with the county and the stakeholders to maybe somehow be able to operate within the county here. And so we would love to adhere to any and all standards and participate in that dialogue.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. Are there any questions for Mr. Singer? Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Hi, Jay Major, President, CEO, MedStar, 25968 476th Avenue, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So I've been in this business, my whole entire life, and I've been in that position that this gentleman just stood up and talked with you folks about. And I'm sure they have a great service. Here's what I've learned in my tenure of doing ambulance service. The 911 service is a business. It's a service, not a business. And as we know, the 911 service does not make money. It loses money. My company, to the tune of about $500,000 a year, funds the 911 service in Brandon and the surrounding area with up to 7 ambulances that we have. That costs a lot of money. Now, how do we make that money up? You're saying, well, that's a stupid business decision. And it kind of is. It kind of is a stupid business decision. But the way that we make our money is by doing the transit service in Sioux Falls. So the way we make our money is by taking the transports out of the hospitals and delivering those people to other facilities. And that income that comes in doesn't go to a separate pot. It goes into the same pot that our 911 service goes into. We put it all together. That's why we opened up our transit service, because the ambulance service is so expensive and the need for transit in Sioux Falls was there. We opened it up, and that money from our transit service goes into our ambulance pot. And because of that, our response time in the city of Brandon is about 3 minutes, and in the county, I suppose, is about 8 minutes. Unheard of response times, because myself, my wife, my family, and my employees have their heart and soul into this, into what we're doing. Now, I'm just going to be really frank with you folks. I was asked by a company to be bought out, and I said no. I'm not going to be bought out because the philosophy of the company that wanted to buy me out wasn't the same philosophy I have and that I've worked for my whole life. And I have no intention of selling out now to anybody because I realized how important it was what our family was doing in our area that we have. And I also realized that some of my actions, even with my friends at Paramedics Plus, in the past, I was misguided with some of the things that I thought was correct because of quote-unquote competition. And I still believe competition is good. But I also know that the competitive part of ambulance services won't work in our part of the state. It may work in other places, it may work in other states. It doesn't work here because you have two private companies that are trying to exist on the transfers to provide our 911 service. And I'm sure that Mike would agree with that. And if by chance we couldn't take a trip, we're giving it to Mike. Because we know that that money is going back into our system to provide the services that we need in Sioux Falls and the surrounding area. If we can't provide a transport, it's either going to go to the closest ambulance or we're going to give it to Paramedics Plus. As we had 3 calls right in a row just this weekend. 3 calls, boom, boom, boom. We had a truck that was just pulling up to McKinnon. They had a truck on the east side of town. And so we called up and asked Metro who was closer. And they were closer. We let them take that call because they were 10 minutes closer than we were. So it wasn't about the money, it was about taking care of that patient, taking care of the situation. So I understand, and I'm not, I have no ill feelings towards another service. What I'm saying is it won't work in our system that we worked up, in my estimation. Because if it got to the point to where a lot of our transports started leaving us, then we would have no option other than to quit our 911 service and go in competition with a transfer service and make more money and less hours. And we choose not to do that. So I just wanted to bring my point of view. My heart and soul is into it. I have stood here. I've been wrong on a lot of issues a lot of times. On this one, I'm right. And I appreciate your time and efforts.
Thank you for your comments, Jay. Anyone else that wants to speak for or against? And please let me know what side you're speaking on. We're doing against at this point, against the ordinance. But if you're not speaking against, please make sure you say that.
Mike Bureau, Chief Operating Officer of Paramedics Plus, 6508 East 45th Street, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'd like to speak today in favor for, and what I would like to remind this County Commission is 3 years ago, before we had made the jurisdictional changes in response areas, both I and Jay came up here and had a civilized conversation and discussion of Zone 5. There were some decisions that were made that was awarded to Jay. We supported him in that. And he serviced that area. Moving a couple years in the future, things began to change in this county, along with responses, and we were asked to attend the county ambulance meeting, where we worked together as an entire group, kind of as a first step to create those new jurisdictions that you see today. The Fitch study came forward. Once again, a couple years went by. Once again, all these partners got together and put together with stakeholders in their local community, in the county, and the people who actually provide the service, together an ordinance that we feel best fits the needs of this county, the providers, and its citizens. So I just wanted to give my support for the fact that we've worked very hard as an entire group and a team to come together to put this ordinance as it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask
Commissioner Burns.
Mike a question.
Mike, you have a question for you.
So, with Mr. Mazur's comment on the transports, if you guys were to lose, say, the transports in your district, would you guys have to go out of business, or is there enough work otherwise to keep you going? Is Jay correct when he talks about that being sort of what covers the other costs?
I can't speak necessarily. I'm not familiar with Jay's books, but what I can speak to is that nationally there's an understanding that communities choose often when they have public providers, when they have private providers or volunteer providers to subsidize their emergency work through non-emergency work, right? So the way in which that is billed and the way that is paid through insurance, both private and public, allows for that mechanism to create that blanket of support to support the 911 system.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Oh, Commissioner Karski.
So if there was a requirement that any ride that originated in Minnehaha County, they be licensed in the county, would be different than what the ordinance is as it's currently written, correct?
No.
No.
No?
The ordinance as it's currently written and proposed is that the ones in the county transport in the county.
Okay, but it's
and
not, it doesn't have to do with the origination of the ride.
If the, if someone, again, from T came to Sioux Falls and picked up someone at Avera and took them to a nursing home in Worthing, that would be okay.
But,
Thank,
okay.
thank you, Mike, for your comments. Thank you. Commissioner Karski, did you have another comment?
I'm just, there's no requirement that if the ride originates in the county that the license, that the organization be licensed in the county.
No, correct.
Okay.
Rapid City could come out and pick up a Rapid City person and drive them back, and we have no control over them.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning. Ryan Siddick, 47566 253rd Baltic. Speaking as for our county ordinance. I'm the ambulance director for Del Rapids Community Ambulance Service. We've worked tirelessly on this document. Benega, Barth, you were both in on some of these meetings over the last year. We feel like we've put together a good document, and we should say it is a start. There's been some discussion here about what about these transports that originate in Minnehaha County and leave somewhere else. And I don't necessarily disagree. I don't know what your guys' position is. Commissioner Karski, I'm not sure what your position is with that. However, I'm not one that, as we continue to move forward with this document, this is the beginning, and if we need to amend certain things to say, you know what, maybe transports originating in Minnehaha County should fall under this ordinances, even if they leave the county, because maybe our responsibility to make sure that the care they receive between Minnehaha County and whatever other community they're going to is appropriate. So I would ask for your guys' support with this ordinance. And I would say also that as all of our county agencies, for once, have actually been working together.
Yeah.
And that has been wonderful.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Any other comments? I would look for a decision on the commission side. Commissioner Benega? Oh, excuse me, Lynn, did you have a comment?
Go ahead.
You know, the only thing I do want to say is we've been at this process for a long time. It's not just our office that's been doing this. We can't do it without stakeholders. We can't do it without the commission support. We can't do it without community support. You know, we had a sub-meeting, so to speak, on finances at one point that there was a lot of folks at. So a lot of time and effort by the folks behind me and folks that aren't here. And once again, this is a starting point. It's a pretty good starting point from my point of view, but a lot of work in from my office, and Maggie's fingers are bleeding sometimes on the computer over there. So, like I said, and the one thing that this ordinance does allow that we didn't have in the past is there's an emergency power section. If we run into a situation where we need to make changes because of things that we didn't anticipate, we can do that. Previously, we would have had to come back in a different method to do those. So if we get there, we can do some of those things that we didn't have to do or that we weren't allowed to, so to speak, in other areas. So, you know, I just want to thank the group that's been working here, the administrative group that's put a lot of hours discussion into it, you know, before the commission takes action. So.
Thank you, Lynn. Commissioner Benega?
I would like to make a motion to approve the new ordinance as printed.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Any other comments? Commissioner Benega?
I'd just like to say, and it's already been said before, but when we approved the Fitch study a couple years ago now, there were a lot of different discussions that weren't all on the same page by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it was pretty negative. But if you look from where we came in that conversation to where we're at now, I have to commend those groups, because they literally were sacrificing some of their opinions and throwing out different options that finally, over a long period of time, and 4 work groups and Dr. Luther and Maggie and commissioners and everybody else got to the same point, which rarely happens when we started out from where we were. So thank you for all of that give and take in this process.
I'd also say it was all volunteer time to put this ordinance together. So a lot of people put in a lot of additional hours that people weren't getting paid to do this. This is because we care about what it is and working together as a community. And this is a good example of how people can work together with differences and make them work out. So we hope that continues. Commissioner
Chair.
Barth had a comment.
You know, I would concur with Commissioner Benega. The fact is that ambulance has often been kind of a contentious issue in our county, and I think that I was not a early proponent of the Fitch study, but I would say that I'm amazed at the degree to which these different groups have come together in agreement and not in contention, in agreement to come up with a plan. And, you know, it's going to be subject to revision. I mean, the situation on the ground is going to change. You know, someday Del Rapids may be 50,000 people. I don't know. But I would urge everyone to support this. It's a great step forward.
Okay. We have a Commissioner Karski.
Thank you, Commissioner Benega, for the comments. And just to emphasize that, I want to thank everybody for putting aside their differences and working together on this. But I do think as a commission, you know, that we have to be aware that because they did that, they said we can operate under these conditions. Now, if things change, that upsets that apple cart and potentially the services. We do have to be aware of that and be willing to address those issues. So thank you, everybody, for doing the work you did, and let's make this work for everybody.
I have a motion and a second on the table. If there's no additional comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 13 is a brief presentation from Infrastructures Management Services on pavement management. DJ Boothie. Morning, DJ.
Morning, Commissioners. DJ Boothie, Highway Superintendent. Asset management is an important tool that the Highway Department uses in order to make objective maintenance decisions. It's a systematic approach of inventorying assets and managing that data. Currently, the Highway Department has asset management programs of varying complexity and sophistication for vehicles, equipment, pavement, bridges, signs, and culverts. In 2013, we embarked on a formal pavement management, asset management system, and the roads were surveyed in 2014 by Infrastructure Management Services, or IMS. And then we surveyed them again in 2017. So today we invited Zach Thomason, standing back here behind me here, to present the results of our 2017 survey to the County Commission. And so we've got a PowerPoint set up here, and we'll be available for comments or questions after Zach's presentation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, DJ, and certainly want to thank the commission for having me out again today. I know it's been a long morning for you folks. I do have a bit of good news this morning as well, so we'll jump right into it. Again, my name is Zach Thomason with IMS, and today we're going to review the 2018 state of the roadway network here in Minnehaha County. So let's first take a look at the scale of investment. What do we own? What's it worth? So the county owns and maintains approximately 347 centerline miles of roadway. That equates to about 6.6 million square yards of pavement. That makes your pavement network, the road network that folks drive on a daily basis, your single largest visible asset that you folks maintain on a daily basis. And that asset is valued at $858,000 per mile, or a total aggregate of just shy of $300 million. This is a huge asset. And that valuation does not include the value of the land or bridges either. That's just the pavements and the right-of-way. If we take a quick look at the condition score, the county's network average PCI score is a 77. That is a very good score. And we'll talk about what that means and how it relates to others here in a few slides. If you're not familiar with PCI, it's a pavement condition index that ranks the health of a road on a 0 to 100 scale. So 0 is absolutely horrible, on its way back to gravel, while 100 is a brand new road that was paved yesterday by the county. The county's backlog is at 2%, which is an excellent number. Backlog is the big ticket work that's to be done in the county. It's the full reconstruction candidates, It's the partial reconstruction candidates. It's the expensive rehab work that's to be done. 2% of the network in that category, it's a great number, and we'll talk more about that in the next few slides as well. And before I go any further, I believe the commission has a copy of this presentation. I'm not necessarily going to touch on each slide, so if there's something I miss, please don't hesitate to ask yep, okay, perfect, as well. So why do pavement management? The concept is very simple. It's far more cost effective to maintain an asset and your roadways over its life than it is to let it deteriorate and rebuild it later. So what you're seeing there in that first graph is the typical deterioration of a pavement in that red line. In the first 40% of a pavement's life, it only has a 15% drop in quality, so the slope is fairly shallow. But in the next 15% of that pavement's life, it has a 40% drop in quality. So that's that cliff there, so to speak. So it behooves us to spend $1 now maintaining roads before they drop off that cliff than it does to defer maintenance in favor of rebuilding that road at a cost of $8 later. Roads operate no different than any other asset in our life. The most common is the cars that we drive on a daily basis. We change the oil, we flush the coolant in an effort to maximize the life of the vehicle at the absolute lowest cost. And roads are certainly exactly the same. So we have to make a conscious decision. Do we change the oil in our vehicles every 3,000 miles? Or do we swap the engine every 30,000 miles? Both are acceptable decisions. One just has a huge financial impact at the end of the day. So it behooves us to maintain our assets throughout their life in good condition. And if we take a look at another curve, that second graph, that line there, that dotted line is again the typical deterioration of a pavement. If we can capture roadways in a target zone, we can maximize their life at the lowest cost, doing the oil changes on the network. So that gray bar there represents the target zone. So in terms of PCI, that target zone at the lower end is generally a PCI of about a 65, upwards on the high end of about an 85. If we can capture roads in that zone, we can treat them at the lowest cost and maximize life at the absolute lowest cost as well. So some tools we use to rate the streets, that's the laser road surface tester there. That piece of equipment was mobilized to survey all streets owned and maintained by the county. So that van is equipped with high-speed lasers, HD cameras, and GPS technology as well. And its job was to assess the surface condition of every road. So it literally measured the alligator cracking, the bleeding, the roughness, the potholes of the road, and it adhered to a standard that was developed by it's a set of protocols called ASTM D6433 that was developed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And this is the same standard that we used back in 2014 to assess the county road network as well. So we've talked a little bit about PCI and what it means. Let's take a look at what it looks like. These are the poor to marginal roads that score between a 25 and a 50. So these roads do have localized base failures. They have rutting at intersections. They have extensive cracking, and they have a lot of patching. So these are simply tired streets that are due for a thicker overlay and possibly a surface removal and replacement. They've served the citizens a long time, but they are now in need of some form of a heavier rehab. And these are high priority to avoid reconstruction as well, because these critical roads that fall into this category have the highest cost of deferral, meaning if we defer them to a later date, they're going to drop into a partial reconstruction or full reconstruction candidate as well. So not only do we have to focus on those target roads that are in good shape, between a 65 and an 85, we also have to focus on the roads that are not in good shape, that have a high cost of deferment if we defer them for a later time. If we take a look at the good roads, these are the roads that score between a 60 and a 70. These have few localized distresses and minimal base failures. If this road was distressed due to loading, meaning we noticed that this road was exhibiting load-associated distresses, alligator cracking, rutting, potholes, things caused by the pounding of traffic, it would trigger a thin overlay in the pavement management system. But we analyze the data in an effort to do a bit of a cost-benefit analysis. So if it's not exhibiting load-associated distresses, we can trigger an appropriate rehab like a surface treatment. So a slurry seal, or a microsurface, or a chip seal, something more cost-effective that can be applied based on the condition of the roadway. So these strategies certainly have the greatest cost benefit. They're thinner strategies that result in less crown buildup on the roadways. They're less intrusive rehab to the citizens, and they maintain the existing drainage on the network as well. Some of the very good roads, take a look at those. These are roads that have very few distresses, no rutting. They're between a PCI score of about a 70 and an 85. They have no base failures. They have a smooth ride. They're non-weathered. These are good candidates for some crack seal with a good surface treatment as well. These maintain the existing drainage as mentioned previously, and they waterproof and preserve the road as well. And again, they extend the pavement life at the absolute lowest cost. And lastly, the excellent roads. These are the new roads in the county. They're in like new condition, very few minor distresses. They have a smooth ride. They have good drainage. These should provide a solid 5 to 10 years prior to the first rehab with some routine maintenance. And lastly, the final rehab program focuses on pavement preservation only. So when we start talking about budgets and what it takes to maintain the county's existing roadway conditions, it focuses on pavement preservation only. It doesn't necessarily include routine maintenance such as crack sealing and potholes and sweeping and striping and design or safety concerns. Those are all outside of the pavement management program. So let's take a look at the pavement condition data. This is a PCI distribution graph that tells us a lot about the county. So before we even do the analysis, this is one of the first things we look at to get a handle on the county's condition. What we can see here, that blue line is the typical distribution that we see. So typically, we expect to see a bell curve that is skewed slightly to the right and centered between about a 60 and a 70. The county skewed even further to the right and centered between about a 75 and an 80. So we're in good shape, and we can see that by those red bars there that peak above that typical distribution line. And there's 3 metrics of health that we use to assess any given agency across the country. The first is the network average condition. The county's condition, again, is a 77. The average that we see nationally is between a 60 and a 65. So you folks are well above average on that metric. And to put that into perspective, less than 1 in 10 agencies we survey will actually score above a 75. So you folks are in rare company from that standpoint. Less than 1 in 20 will actually score above an 80. An 80 is not sustainable for most agencies and is very tough to maintain as well. The second metric is backlog. So you folks get a check mark on PCI. Your backlog is at 2%. Backlog is all the very poor and poor roads that score below a PCI of 40. So it's all the big ticket work that's to be done in the county. 2% is a fantastic number. Generally, anything less than 10% is considered financially ideal from a pavement management and finance perspective, meaning we're not letting the big ticket work pile up faster than we can tackle it. You're in great shape at 2%, so we would suggest at least keeping that below the 5% mark, plus or minus 2%. It's going to fluctuate in some years over others as well, but backlog is in good shape. As backlogs start approaching 15, 20%, that's where we get concerned, because that big ticket work piles up faster than we can pump capital or funds into the pavement management system. And at 20%, it can literally spiral out of control on you. That's just for background purposes. You folks are nowhere close to that, so that's not a concern as of today. The last metric is the percent of roads rated as excellent. So they're above a PCI score of an 85. Generally, we like to see a bare bones minimum of 15% of the network falling into this category, as it tells us if the county's been reinvesting in the roadway network. What we can see here, the county is at about 34%. So we can see significant reinvestment in the roadway network. Roads are a priority here in Minnehaha County. So let's compare the data to where we were back in 2014. So those blue bars there is the PCI distribution that I presented to you folks about 3 years ago. What's interesting here, 3 years ago, you had a network average PCI of a 69 and backlog at 4%. And today, you're at a 77 with backlog at 2%. You've made significant improvements in roadway condition. You've been doing a lot of good work out there, and it shows through the data that we've analyzed as well. Oh, actually, if I go back up, just want to mention one more thing. On that note, last time, 3 years ago, the only metric of health you folks did not meet was the percent of excellent roads. You fell a little shy of those roads that scored above a PCI score of 85. You were at about the 14.5% mark. And you can see there that you folks have certainly made significant improvements on that front as well. If we plot all that data on a map so you can see it graphically, those are the roadway conditions here in the county. Green is good, red is bad, yellow is all the subtle levels in between. We would suggest a minimum target PCI of greater than or equal to 75. You're in good shape. We should at least attempt to keep our asset in good shape as well, and we would certainly suggest maintaining the backlog below the mark of 5% as well. So if we take a look at the analysis methodology, in terms of how we do it and how we run the analysis, we have to understand a few basic items. We understand funding is not $0, nor is it unlimited. We are constrained by a budget. We have finite funds, and we have to maximize how we spend those funds on a daily basis. We certainly understand the county places a value on all its roads. It's arterial roads, it's collector roads, it's local roads. But what we want to do is we want to identify an annual budget that'll maintain the current PCI and backlog. We have to know what those numbers are before we can start making solid decisions. We want to examine the effects of your current funding levels. How does that impact condition over the long run as well? We want to prevent deterioration in pavement quality. And a few notes, pavement management is priority-based. It's not worst first. So we don't simply line up the pavements from best condition down to worst and start tackling at the bottom. That is effectively swapping the engine in your car as opposed to doing the oil changes at the end of the day. Your monies don't go as far, and the rest of the network suffers as a result of it. It's a balance. We have to do a bit on the good side. We have to do a bit on the bad side. We can't pick one or the other. ADA compliance, drainage, inslopes, safety concerns, design stuff, that's all outside of the pavement management system and not included in these budgets. And there's no cost of inflation in some of the numbers that I'm about to present as well. Before we run the pavement analysis, before we hit the go button on the analysis, we do what we call a few life cycle estimates. This is simply good, defensible arithmetic or math that we use, we use to help defend the final analysis results, and it helps us fine-tune the process as well. What you're seeing behind that bar there is what we call a network deficiency analysis, meaning we identify the total deficit in the county. So if someone wrote the county a blank check to go out and fix all roads in like-new condition, that number would be on the order of about $38 million to fund everything in like-new. Now that's not reality, but we can use that information to identify an approximate annual budget to maintain the network, and that number was on the order of about $2.85 million to maintain existing conditions. With that run, we now run the pavement analysis. And this is the results of the pavement analysis that we ran for the county. That top line there is the fix-all budget. So that's that blank check to go out and fix everything in like-new condition. That's on the order of about $8.2 million per year. We have to know what that top number is before we can run the analysis. That red dotted line there, that $4 million budget, that's the maintain your existing backlog budget. So if you wanted to maintain your backlog as it is today, you would need to spend about $4 million per year to do so at that 2% mark. Those two green lines that you see there, that green dotted line and that solid green line, the solid green line is the county's existing budget of $3.5 million, and the green dotted line is the recommended budget of $3.56 million. They trended very, very closely in the pavement analysis, and for all intents and purposes, they were practically identical in the analysis as well. The next line, that red line, is the steady state PCI budget, meaning to maintain your existing network PCI to 77, you would need to spend about $3.13 million per year. With that said, our recommended budget there, that green dotted line, is simply the difference between the maintain your current backlog budget, $4 million, and the maintain your existing PCI budget at $3.13 million. It's just the difference right in the middle. The next budget, that purple line there, that is the PCI control budget. That is the budget required to maintain your PCI at the 75 PCI mark. And that's the minimum mark that we would certainly recommend. So you would need about $2.5 million per year to maintain your network average above that. The last line is obviously the do-nothing line. If we spend $0 on the road network over the next 5 years, our PCI would drop from a 77 down to about a 67 in a 5-year horizon. Let's talk about the cost of equity equity removal very quickly here. You can calculate the cost of underfunding the roadway network. As a roadway network deteriorates, we are literally removing equity from our assets, kind of similar to our houses or our cars. As we let them deteriorate, we are losing equity in the system. So what we do, we know that we're starting at a PCI of a 77. And knowing that and the cost, the fixed all cost that we identified, we can calculate the cost per point of increase. So for every point that we want to increase the PCI score, we need to spend approximately $5.6 million to do so. We can use that information to start telling us a little bit of a story. Our steady state budget is $3.1 million. We started at a PCI of a 77. In 5 years, we end at a PCI of 77. So we are removing zero equity from our system. We're maintaining our ground. We're losing zero funds over the long-term horizon that you see there. Well, let's take a look at a sample budget of $1.5 million, just for illustration purposes. At $1.5 million per year, we would start at a PCI of a 77. We would drop to a 71 in a 5-year horizon. So we would lose 5 points in a 5-year horizon. The cost to cost to replace those 5 points would be on the order of about $30 million per year, above and beyond the $1.5 million that we're investing. Actually, I should backtrack. I said $30 million per year. That's $30 million over the 5-year horizon. Knowing that information, we can see the total 5-year cost is much greater than it would have been if we'd have maintained the network in good condition. So as we remove equity from the system, we can calculate the cost of replacing that. And at some point, someone does have to replace the equity in the pavement management system. In terms of rehab needs, folks always ask, well, how do you select one road over another? And it's a process of prioritizing the pavement management plan. What you see here is a fairly complicated graph that simply shows when certain rehabs are done at certain times in a pavement's life. So on the x-axis there, we can see the PCI score, and on the y-axis, we can see the structural index of the network as well. So in terms of how we select, arterials have the highest priority, followed by collectors and then local roadways. And the order of rehab selection is based on the cost of deferral. So that's how we infuse a cost-benefit factor into the pavement management program. So for example, if a street requiring a thick overlay is deferred, the incremental cost is about 100%. But if a street slips from a thin to a moderate overlay, the penalty is only about 25%. So we have to balance where we get the biggest bang for our buck as a part of the pavement management program. Everybody likes to know where they stand in comparison to others. This is just a select sampling of clients across the country. You folks are at a 77. You're in a very good place, certainly at the top of the chart there in terms of PCI. So to recap, you have a very good PCI, you have excellent backlog, you are adequately funded for pavement preservation. And we'll just wrap it up with final recommendations as well. We'd certainly recommend that the county maintain their PCI at a 77 with backlog below 5% for the entire roadway network. The county's existing budget of $3.5 million will result in a network PCI of a 78, a slight jump in PCI and a backlog at 2% over the next 5 years. And these budgets are based on the roadway distress conditions as well as an optimized approach, meaning if we change the way we select rehab candidates, it changes how those models react as well. We would certainly recommend the use of a full suite of rehab strategies that are reviewed on an annual basis. Cost change, material cost change, labor cost change, those things impact the pavement management plan. These budgets do not include costs for ADA compliance, county overheads, preventative maintenance, engineering, widening roads, or conversion of gravel roads. It's just what is needed to maintain what you have now in its present state. Steady, effective rehab and maintenance on an annual basis will save the county far more money over deferred maintenance in the long run. Number 5, we've talked about a bit, and I'll wrap up with 6. The county should resurvey their streets every few years to update the models, as well as the pavement management program within it. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Are there any questions on pavement management? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Item number 14 is consider a motion to declare the Highway Department asphalt patching surface and surplus, and authorized to sell to Yankton County the price of $8,000.
Good morning again, Commissioners. We replaced our asphalt patcher earlier this spring. We have the new patcher in use as we speak. And so we're looking at surplusing the old one, getting rid of it, and looking at the best way to do that. In some conversations at one of our conferences recently with the Yankton County Highway Superintendent, they showed interest and basically made an offer to us for $8,000, which our fleet supervisor feels is a very good offer for us. And so requesting your authorization to declare this Falcon Patcher surplus and sell it to Yankton County for $8,000.
Comments? Commissioner Karski?
DJ and I met about this a couple weeks ago, liaison meeting, and this value is far exceeds what we expected to receive at public auction, so I think it's a very good price.
Additional comments?
I make a motion to approve.
A motion?
Second.
A second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4 with 1 abstention or absent.
I have one more item that I would like to request since that was approved. If we could possibly designate at this time where the funds from would go to, the $8,000, it would prevent another agenda item in a couple weeks.
I'm not sure we can do that without an agenda item, can we?
It was written in the memo, but maybe the way that it's written on the agenda is different.
Well, Madam Chair, I think typically it would be listed on the agenda.
That's why I think you're gonna have to come back, and you don't have to come back if you don't want to, but I think we have to have it on the agenda as to where we're gonna put it. I would feel more comfortable with that since it isn't listed on the public agenda.
Sure.
So, thank you. Item number 15 is authorize the chairman to sign amendment number 1 to the final design agreements with Infrastructure Group, Design Group for the County Highway 146 reconstruction. DJ.
Commissioners, as you know, we've had several different agenda items for County Highway 146 reconstruction design. That's ongoing right now, and we're hoping to do some construction work next year. As I think most of you have heard, our land surveyor left us a couple months ago, and that person was very heavily involved in the right-of-way negotiations and different things going on with that design project. Since that time, we haven't filled that position. We haven't been able to fill the position, and so we requested an amendment from IDG to pick up the extra work that our in-house staff was doing on this project. And they provided the amendment proposal, and we reviewed that and reviewed the number of hours and everything with each individual parcel that we have to negotiate. And the amendment request that we've negotiated is $48,127. The original agreement was $131,573. That brings the new amended agreement amount total to $179,700. So we'll request your approval of this amendment number 1 for IDG's design contract at this time.
Any questions for DJ?
Move approval.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. I just have a comment. We have that vacancy that hasn't been able to be filled, and sadly, it wasn't able to be filled because it's costing us $48,000 for not having that person in, which would have gone a long ways to employing somebody. So very sad that we have to do this, but we have a motion, a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 16, thank you, DJ. Item number 16 is a brief presentation on the Lifescape programs and services. I would start by an apology for having you wait almost 2 hours to give a brief presentation. We do ask that you keep it 10 minutes or less, and I really apologize. We will try to do better by, in the future, of not scheduling you at the end of a very long agenda. And thank you for waiting.
You're very welcome. Can I distribute these
Yep,
to
you
the
can.
commissioners?
That'd be fine. Actually, why don't we have Craig help you, then you don't have to do it. So.
Thank you.
Anyway, Ann Rick McFarland, CEO of Lifescape, and in spite of the delay, I'm delighted to be here and have the opportunity to speak to you. First of all, I was struck by the diversity of the things that you all have to deal with every time you meet, I'm assuming, and so I'm hoping that I can add to that and just, I think about what you're doing in terms of taking care of this community. And I hope that you agree that Lifescape is one of those things that really adds to the value of the community. So I have some information for you that I will not go through, but first of all is the letter that we send to you every year requesting some support. And the support is always deeply appreciated, but maybe more importantly are some accompanying documents. One, the one that we distributed and is up on the overhead, is what we call our position paper for legislative issues, and so it's what we bring forward to legislators and to our state partners when we're talking about the things we like to celebrate, as well as the things that are our challenges. Then a couple of brochures, one of which is more general, that talks about our various service lines, 13 of them. And then specifically one that talks about our specialty hospital, because that seems to be one of those programs that's relatively unknown and untapped. And it's very unique and something that I think we can meet more needs if people understand what it involves a little bit more completely. So just a few pieces of information. First of all, mission: empowering children and adults with disabilities to lead fulfilling lives. Some statistics: we're a statewide organization, and we also have a rehab center in Sioux City. We serve about 3,500 children and adults every year. We also serve people of all abilities. People are surprised by that because our mission really emphasizes people with disabilities, but I want to point out that in our rehab centers, we serve people of all ages and all abilities, and so that's something that I like to make sure people are aware of. We have 1,200 staff. We are the 10th largest employer in town. We have a $60 million budget. We've been a chamber member for 70 years, and about 62% of our $60 million budget comes from Medicaid. So our challenges are many and ongoing in terms of our funding and support. We're licensed and accredited by 4 different state entities: Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Social Services, and Department of Human Services. We also have the distinction of having the longest national accreditation of any organization of our type in the nation, with the Council on Quality and Leadership. And I point that out because I think it really separates us in terms of just the level of quality and care that we provide to our customers. So we're very proud of that. A few things to highlight on the position paper that, our poor state legislators, they hear so many sad stories, and there are sad stories in terms of the challenges. But we also like to make sure that people are aware, and I want you to be aware, that there's so many things to be proud of and so many successes and so many accomplishments. So this first page is really to try to lift some of those things up, because we do have needs that are unmet. We have challenges that I'm going to turn to, but at the end of the day, there are still hundreds and hundreds of people that count on us every single day to impact their lives. They count on us to make sure their child gets education or some rehab services that they need, maybe a place to live because the family unit can't support that child in their home. We're the only specialty school in the state. We're the only children's intermediate care facility in the state, and we're the only inpatient rehab hospital in the state. So I hope you're proud of the fact that right here in our very own backyard, we offer something that nobody else in the entire state offers. And in fact, we have children from Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Alaska for some reason in our children's services. So we not only impact South Dakota, but we impact some of the surrounding states as well. So I won't read these bullets to you, but I hope you'll take the time to just see that we're doing things that need to be done. When I talk about our size, I don't talk about it to talk about that we're the 10th largest employer, but rather our footprint and the size of our footprint is important, because we're meeting needs that other people can't meet, and we're meeting needs that need to be met. And those needs are here today, and they're going to be here in the future. So we're really proud of the fact that we are an organization that can step up and do what needs to be done, and to making sure that people can gain as much independence as possible, and to also make sure that families can stay together as a unit and have a healthy family and healthy children. When we look at some of our challenges, not new to any of you, but workforce continues to be number one. Anything we can do in this community to bring more workers into the community certainly would be appreciated. We touted it as being one of the great places to bring new businesses into, and I'm like, that's terrific, but bring workers with you. so that we can minimize the competition. Pay, of course, in our organization is paramount. A lot of our workers, probably 650 of our 1,200 workers, are entry-level, frontline workers, critical in terms of the rubber hitting the road and who's going to really day in and day out take care of the people that need our services. But those folks are making $12.50 an hour. It's pretty disheartening when you run down Minnesota Avenue and see Pizza Hut advertising for $15 an hour. Somehow the comparison of what our folks are expected to do and what's expected of a worker at Pizza Hut are not one and the same. So as a public servant, I challenge you, as I've been challenging our legislators, to think about what do we want to have happen to people with disabilities. At one point, they were warehoused and sent away very expensively, by the way. So the government decided they wanted private organizations to come in and provide services, and we're doing that. We're doing it inexpensively, and we're doing it very well. But at some point, we have to decide how important is it, because we are not able to sustain what we have. For the first time in our 70-year history, we have not enrolled people who needed our services, and we've discharged people who needed our services because we don't have staff. Not because we don't know how to do it, not because we can't do it, but we can't do it if we don't have people. So somehow, I don't know what the answer is, and part of it is money, but part of it is just flatly workers. Somehow embracing and working collectively as organizations and as the public to come together to find, when I listen to the ambulance guys, they came together and worked up a solution, and maybe a better solution than if they would have expected you folks to do it. So I'm not asking you to develop the solution, but I do think there are ways that we need to work together more cooperatively to try to think about what we want to have happen to our citizens who, through no fault of themselves, of their own, can't take care of themselves. Emerging issues, we have a new strategic plan. Workforce is the first issue in our strategic plan. Funding is always an issue, and it's becoming even a more challenging issue in terms of uncertainty, in terms of threats of block granting, the waiver services that we have, knowing that will ultimately end up in being a shortfall. One of the things that you've maybe heard about, but the lack of mental health services, I think all around is a significant issue in this community, and it's particularly a significant issue for people with disabilities. Most of our mental health counselors aren't equipped to deal with people with intellectual disabilities in addition to the mental health diagnosis, and so we find our people in those situations not served at all, and a danger to themselves and a danger to others. So this is another one of those we need to sit down and really talk about what are some solutions that we can work toward to be more supportive so people don't end up in that crisis stage. For our organization, facilities is a major issue. Although LifeScape is only about 4.5 years old, the Coming Together of Children's Care in South Dakota Achieve, we're a 70-year-old organization with 70-year-old buildings, and we're trying to think about the next 70 years. So you may be hearing about some plans of us embarking upon some major building projects and renovations coming up in the next 3 to 5 years. So we're looking at that with some anticipation. We do continue to expect to grow, especially in our rehab services, our children's education services, and in our hospital. We're not sure what's going to happen with our adult services in terms of growth. We're challenged right now to sustain what we have. We have implemented new criterion to really look at sustainability of our programs and services. And there are some hard decisions we're going to have to make over the next few years to see what we can move forward with and what we can't. We have implemented, just as an FYI, this is a wonderful book. The Community Foundation brought this author, Jean Bell, in a few years ago. I'm looking at Gerald, you might even remember this, and she authored this book, Nonprofit Sustainability, and frankly, it's something that I think every nonprofit should really consider. Our board adopted criterion from this book, excuse me, added some criterion of our own to really look at those service lines, which ones are profitable, what's the impact, and what does the future hold in relation to them. You know, we're mission-driven organizations, so our hand is over our heart most of the time. But we've got to be looking at sustainability in terms of resources. And this is a much more objective way for us to really assess not only what we have, but where we are going to go into the future. So if it's not a resource that you're aware of, and if you work with other nonprofits, I'd really recommend it. It's been of great value to us. Technology is another area that we're really focused on, trying to be big, be bold, but move on it. We think that technology could impact how we provide services and to whom we could provide services, and maybe make us a little less reliant on the workforce in terms of some of the things that need to be done to support, in particular, our adults, and also to conduct some of our rehab services. And I guess finally, I'll just say, the organization is embarking on a CEO search. I announced my retirement in January. After 32 years here in Sioux Falls at Achieve and now Lifescape, I'm going to close that chapter, and I look forward to some other chapters. The board is in active search. They got 160 applicants, narrowed the field down to 15, then further narrowed the field down to 5. They're going to start doing interviews in the next couple of weeks, so it's maybe really going to happen. So we'll see how it all ends up. And with that, there's a lot of information I could go over, but out of respect for your time, again, thank you so much for the invitation to be here and just to share a little bit about the organization. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Benega?
I don't have any questions. But, I think you're being underrating your impact in the community, but more importantly, your 32 years of service have now led all of us to a better place. And the bottom line is, besides the fact that you were just nominated for the South Dakota Hall of Fame, we all enjoy in this community a better quality of life because of what you've done, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Commissioner Barth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got to say, I was liaison some years back to the South Dakota Achieve, and I got to know you there. And then I would also go on to say that the facts of life, you know, you think you know them when you're 16 or whatever, but the facts of life, like, it was an eye-opener for me doing elder care with my parents. What you have to do for your clients is the facts of life that we all avert our eyes to at times. But having been on your board and having been on many other boards, and I'm not saying this is no exaggeration, you are the best CEO or the best executive director I have ever worked with in any organization. So I'm so sorry that you're leaving.
I'm not going anywhere. I just am going to try to do something else with my time for a while, but thank you for your very kind comments. I clearly love what I do.
Commissioner Kursky?
And I've known you probably 30 of the 32 years you've been there, so thank you for what you do, and congratulations on opening another chapter. Just a plug for the organization. My daughter worked as a direct support professional for 6 years from the time she graduated high school till she graduated with her master's degree, and very, very rewarding work that she did. I saw it in her eyes and her expression, but she also enjoyed working for your organization. It was very well run, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. In here, I talk about this is the hardest job that people will ever love, and that's just really true. Once you get into it, you get hooked, and there's just nothing like it. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much, and enjoy your retirement, and I'm sure, hopefully, we will still see you in the community.
Yes,
so.
I hope you do. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Item number 17 is a brief presentation from the Minnehaha County Public Defender's Office, Tracy Smith, and I think you were bumped from another week. Am I correct on that? And I'm still going to ask you to try to limit it to 10 minutes, please.
Yes.
We're already running over our scheduled time.
We also appreciate your patience, too.
Yeah.
So.
As in weeks of patience, since she got
Yes.
bumped before.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Tracy Smith. I'm the department head for the Minnehaha County Public Defender's Office.
Tracy, you need to use the mic. It doesn't pick up that great.
Very well.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair.
And I've also prepared a PowerPoint to help me along here. And I'm going to be back this afternoon, so I also will try to keep it short. The history of the Public Defender's Office, we did open our doors in 1982. The first year we served 567 individuals. And in 2017, last year, we assisted 8,367 members of our community. Our mission is to safeguard the rights of all people entrusted to our care. We receive all of our appointments by the courts that are appointed to our office after filling out an application for court-appointed counsel. Our vision is to ensure that all clients receive quality and zealous representation without regard to their economic or social situation and without regard to the nature of the accusations against them. We value a system free from conflicts of interest between attorney and client, caseloads based on national recognized ethical professional standards, and oversight by an active independent body, that the constitutional right to counsel is preserved, and access to attorney is timely enough to protect their constitutional rights, and that attorneys have adequate time and resources to focus on individual needs of their clients promptly and efficiently. The objectives of an efficient indigent defense delivery system is cost savings through reduced duration and costs of confinement, meaning that there's cost savings through reduced time in jail, cost savings through reduced reliance on public defense services. Our clients are billed at $94 an hour for the cost of court-appointed attorney fees. We don't like to see court appointments for counsel unnecessarily. The only time that a client should be appointed counsel is if they're facing a loss of a liberty interest in which they're facing time in jail, either actual or suspended time, or they're subjected to a jury trial. We also want to see reduced reliance on emergency or social services requests. Sometimes we receive appointments because they're off their medications, or they end up in the hospital for a mental commitment hold. We also want to see cost savings by reducing lengthy judicial delays. We also want to see cost savings from reduced post-conviction court appointments. If a client loses their case at trial or is unhappy with their services, then the Public Advocate's Office, which the county also provides support services for, is then appointed to represent them on that, which can be costly. Indigent defense in Minnehaha County, it might be hard to see on this slide. In 2017, we received 50% of the funding expended for indigent defense services. However, we provided 69% of the services for indigent defense representation in Minnehaha County. We work very hard to be good stewards of county funds and to carry out the goals of the department within our annual budget. The breakdown of the public defender caseload, felony cases have increased by 84% over the last 5 years and 165% over the last 10 years. Felonies are the categories of cases we handle that are the most time-intensive and utilize the most resources. These cases require the most investigation and also preparation time from our attorneys. The consequences for our clients are the most severe in this category of cases. There are also more delays, and our clients also tend to remain in custody longer. They also require a larger share of the resources in comparison to all of the other types of cases we handle. The dramatic increase in these types of cases have also required us to ask for more attorney time and required us to ask for more resources. We have adjusted how we handle our cases by switching the number of cases we handle in each category so that we can dedicate more of our attorney work time to the higher volume of felony cases that we are handling. In addition to handling felony cases and our time in the office, we also do a lot in the community, and I wanted to make sure that the commission knew of all the extra work that we do in addition to working in our office. Mike Miller, our chief deputy in our office, is on the mental health task force. We also service the community through the banquet. Adam Yagaloff, one of our attorneys in our office, teaches English to immigrants in the community. We also receive support through the Bush Foundation and went to the Aspen Ideas Festival. Betsy Doyle in our office is one of the MB nominees. Rachel Preheim participates in Dress for Success. Two of our individuals in our office are reading mentors, and Denise Nelson works for the Worthing Public Safety Commission. We also do a lot of our own recruitment efforts, work with HR, and speak at several of the law schools to try to recruit for our office. Tessica, our office manager, was also a superhero for Sioux Falls. We also participate in the Change Network and through that we have received support for a project that we are working on through the pilot project for the mental health bonding program that we are working on, and Jason Koiston was our NAMI walk team leader. The program I was mentioning was the Revolving Bail Fund Pilot Project. This is a program that you may have heard about. It's the charitable pilot project that we're working on with Southeastern Behavioral Health. This is a program that a person whose mental health or disability has contributed to their arrest. If they are assessed and it's determined that they qualify for services through Southeastern Behavioral Health, there's a fund that makes available money that will allow them to have their bond posted. As long as they participate in the program, they will be able to be bonded out. After the case is over, the money will go back into the revolving bond fund. Referrals for the program will come through court-appointed counsel, and it's only available for cases that originate in Minnehaha County. We will do this right after the initial appearance stage so that we can intervene as quickly as possible. And this program will allow us to serve our clients more holistically and provide them better access to services in their community. Nobody ever recovers from a mental illness simply by sitting in jail. This program will serve as a positive liaison for our office, the courts, the attorneys, and other community stakeholders, and help us to build relationships with other groups in the community who have the same goals of reducing recidivism, ensuring public safety, and ensuring that the individuals who suffer from mental illness are receiving services and keeping the community safe. We've also been working for the last 2 years with the Alternative Sentencing Project, which is another program that we've been working with through Southeastern Behavioral Health. This provides us with a caseworker through Southeastern Behavioral Health. In the last 2 years, she has received 186 referrals. She's completed 103 evaluations. 56 of those were mental health only. 42 of those individuals were in jail. 1 was chemical dependency, and 46 were for both mental health and substance use. Out of those cases, 44 were open clients, 8 were closed clients, which means cases that were no longer represented by our office, and 36 were total care clients. There's 3 different programs that they can be referred into. One is the CARE program, another one is the IMPACT program, and I can't remember the name of the other one off the top of my head. But essentially, if the person qualifies for has a severe mental illness where they've been in crisis and they meet the criteria for participating in the program, they will be eligible for their services. She also refers each of these individuals to other programs in the community, writes reports, and assists our attorneys in arranging for housing and other treatment, and assist the attorneys so that we can keep them from having the jail become a revolving door. We have been able to determine with regard to recidivism that 24% have had new charges as a result of the program, but 76% have not had new charges since we've started this program. Also, other things that have been going on in our office in the last couple of years is we've started a new attorney training program, and I've listed the different criteria we have with our new attorneys. We just had the presentation through the Highway Department about the importance of having good infrastructure and what happens if you don't have good infrastructure in within your department. And this is one area that's been really helpful for our office with our new attorneys. I remember when Commissioner Benega was one of our liaisons, he essentially said that a new employee will decide within 2 weeks whether or not they're going to stay with your department. And out of that, we have started using this program to train our new attorneys. We also, within the first year of being within our office, once they've had a jury trial, we send them to trial school. We've been very fortunate with our relationship with Minnesota that we've been able to have many of our attorneys go to training, a week-long training in Minnesota. Some of our attorneys are still participating in Gideon's Promise. However, for the in-office training, this is the criteria that we do within their first 2 weeks within the office. After that, Mike and I have them go to court with us, and we assist them along the way for the first 3 months that they're in the office. Is there any questions? Speed this up, I know.
Tracy, you did great. Is there any questions for Tracy? We are going to see you again
Right, and probably in
very
August.
shortly.
Madam Chair, I do have a question, and I'm sorry because it has been a long day already. Tracy, you know, on this alternative sentencing stuff, you know, we had 186 referrals. That's out of 8,000 cases last year. Why not more referrals?
Essentially, it's for people who suffer from a severe mental illness. And also, we only have one person. It's a position that we don't even pay for.
Right.
That Southeastern provides. If we had more funding or availability, we would definitely use it more.
So are a lot of mentally disturbed people falling through the crack then?
We
And
would-
showing up, staying in jail, showing up at your office again today?
It's definitely a concern that we have, and we could definitely utilize it a lot more if we had more of Debbie's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a question, Commissioner Karski?
Yes, Tracy's, I guess, board member and chair of the Public Defenders Board. I want to thank her for the presentation. I mean, you look at felonies, you got two numbers there. Felonies being up 84% and mental illness being up 137% just about. Mental illness 60 to 142. I mean, the number isn't significant, but when you look at felonies going from 1,200 to 2,300, that's just a significant number. It's more than what the percentage belies, I believe. So I think it's significant to point that out. And then with the triage project that we've been working on, Tracy's been very involved in that too, and she humbly did not even mention that. You know, we talk about the mental illness, severe mental illness, and you know, how many people are in our jails. A comment that you made just kind of stood out. Nobody ever recovered from mental illness just sitting in jail. So, I mean, that very, very well said. So, thank you.
Thank you.
On that felony also, Tracy, maybe for your presentation this afternoon, because I don't expect you to know this number now, but you have a high number of felonies, but how many of those felonies actually end up charged out in the end or found guilty of felonies, and how many of those are abated to smaller charges? Is there a huge discrepancy, or are those people all those? So I'm just wondering what the difference is between, you know, you end up defending these people, and then how many of them are pled down before they go to court or after they go to court or whatever, and anyway, that's my question.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, we'll go on to the next one. Item number 18 is consider a motion to authorize the state's attorneys to sign 2 agreements for the Indian Care Welfare Act Qualified Expert Witness Services. Judy, we have item A, which is between Minnehaha County State's Attorneys and the State Department of Social Services to provide funds to acquire Indian Care Welfare Act Expert Witness Services. And I probably just said everything you were going to say.
Exactly. As you know, the Indian Child Welfare Act is a federal law which requires the state's attorney to have an expert witness on the Indian Child Welfare Act in those cases in which potential placement of Native American children could result in non-Native American homes. And so the state's attorney this morning is seeking authorization to sign the two contracts. The first is between Minnehaha County State's Attorney's Office and the State Department of Social Services, and the second is the contract between the Minnehaha County State's Attorney's Office and Mr. Luke Yellowrobe, who is a qualified Indian Child Welfare Act and has been providing services for the state's attorney. This is revenue and expense neutral, so that any of the funds that the state's attorney's office pays to Mr. Yellowrobe are paid from the DSS to the state's attorney's office.
Thank you, Judy. Are there any questions for Judy on this? We do this yearly. I would look for a motion on the first one, which is between Minnehaha County State's Attorney's Office and the State Department of Social Services.
So move.
Second.
And a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item B is Minnehaha County State's Attorneys and Luke Yellowrobe of Yellowrobe Consulting.
So move.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Were there
you.
comments?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Judy.
Thanks for coming in this weekend, too.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I do have one comment that I want to go back to item number 15 and just say that when we approved that, there was a motion and a second to approve, and I said passed unanimously. I would amend that to say passed 4-1. Commissioner Barth was out of the room at the time. So just want to clarify that decision. With that, we'll go on to item number 19, which is authorize the chairman to sign an amendment to the seed and transport agreement with MedStar Paramedics Ambulance, Craig Dewey. And I would apologize to you that we did not do this immediately after the other one, so that you had to sit here for another hour. So I'm sorry about that. Craig.
Good morning, Craig Dewey, Commission Office. Minnehaha County has contracted with a third-party vendor to provide decedent transport to the morgue. And the previous contract was held by MedStar, and that contract was signed in 2016. An amendment has been drafted to extend that contract for a period of 2 years. And then should both parties agree, there would be an automatic renewal for another 2 years. Costs have been maintained at that $200 per transport fee. Representatives from MedStar are present. If you have any questions for them, would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Any questions for Craig or questions for MedStar? I would go for motion.
I'll make that motion to
Second.
approve.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Craig. Item number 20 is liaison reports. Are there any? Item number, excuse me, going back to item number 10, which we moved in the agenda, was authorize the chairman to sign the MacArthur Foundation Safety and Justice Challenge Implementation Grant Application. Aaron Sertska.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Commissioners. It's not quite afternoon yet. Erin Serska, Minnehaha County Commission Office. I'm here today to ask approval for the chair to sign a letter of intent in order to submit the application for the MacArthur Grant implementation site. This grant came to us. We were asked to apply for it. About a year and a half ago, the MacArthur Foundation came to us and asked us to apply for an innovation grant. That was $50,000 that we utilized to engage in the process of full-blown planning and research in reference to the triage center for our community. After that year and a half of work, we have a report, a consensus to move forward, a baseline report, collaboration, a bunch of other outputs that have gotten us recognized nationally. That, coupled with some of the reports that we have garnered in the past in reference to pretrial studies and the movement towards using a risk instrument, the foundation has asked us to apply to be an implementation site. What that means is up to $1 million per year for 2 years to implement strategies to look at the jail numbers based on the report that they gave us. The strategies within the application will be based on developing a formal collaboration for data and for oversight between different governmental entities locally. We're going to look at case processing. That is a key piece in best practices across the nation. Pennington County did receive this grant. They got notice of it at the end of last summer and began to spend it down in October. They have a case management plan that was approved by the Chief Justice of our South Dakota Supreme Court. So that would be something that we'd be looking at doing. And they also recommend that we look at the number of continuances within our court. So that would be something else we would investigate as part of the strategies of this. We'd look at the decision points such as pre-arrest, pre-trial, and post-sentence. Pre-arrest means utilizing our triage center for those that suffer with behavioral health symptomologies. Also looking at doing cite and releases. Looking at pretrial, right now we do have 2 pretrial staff that are working on getting the risk instrument implemented, but they recommend that we do full-blown comprehensive pretrial services for release options, and looking at post-sentence opportunities. The sheriff talked about a post-sentence work program, and to build upon some of the stuff that Tracy already said that we're doing. The next strategy is in reference to racial and ethnic fairness. We have a part-time racial and ethnic fairness coordinator under LSS right now, and we've gotten a lot of work done from that, including the Georgetown project. So what this is asking us to do is to look at the length of stay and the prevalence of American Indians and Black within our criminal justice system and develop a plan for that. And the last strategy will focus on looking at special populations such as those with mental health or behavioral health and substance use disorders, developing processes and procedures to help best those folks reach the need, the services that are based on their need. The budget that's attached is draft, and what it reflects is to operationalize the strategies that we said, including a project director and data coordinator, as that is mandatory of the grant itself. The last round of implementation sites that they had apply had about a year planning process. We have a couple weeks after we got our report. So I've been with Commissioner Heiberger. We held stakeholder meetings of all the different entities and stakeholders of our community to garner support and input on the grant. We have letters of intent from Lincoln County Commission, our Public Defender's Office, our Minnehaha County Sheriff. One will be coming from our presiding judge. One will be coming from State's Attorney Aaron McGowan. We have some from nonprofits as well. And we'll be working on gathering those letters of intent to be collaborative at the table if we were to get this grant come when we find out in September. And with that, I'll ask for any questions.
Any questions for Aaron? Commissioner Pender?
Well, this isn't really maybe a question because I did have an opportunity. Aaron was gracious and met with me really early yesterday morning to kind of help me understand better what this is all about. And I do really want to thank Aaron and the whole group that has pulled together a whole lot of work very quickly. And the thing that I just want to clarify, and you can jump in when I get off the rails here, is that this is a grant, that this allows us the opportunity to try some new strategies, new programs with funding, which we struggle with all the time. But it doesn't, what I was originally quite concerned about is that we're creating a lot of positions with 2 years worth of funding, and then what happens, because that's really difficult. We obviously could not afford these positions without this funding right now. And so I just want to be clear that if we go ahead and support this, that what we're going to look to see what works and what doesn't work, and then there's no guarantee that these positions are all going to be in place following the expiration of this grant.
You are exactly correct. A key piece of the grant is talking about sustainability, and that's why it's very important to have all the community players around the table, like the mayor, city council, Lincoln County. The way that the grant and really approaching it collaboratively from the community perspective, that all of the strategies may not be implemented by Minnehaha County. You know, maybe a city of Sioux Falls or collaboratively with Lincoln County. But with any grant funding, there is a start and end date. There is a cycle. And it'll be up to the leaders of this community, if these strategies are successful, how do we sustain them and what does that look like? And the sustainability may look different than the first 2 years. So that is a part of this application. That is something that has been said almost within the first 2 minutes of meeting with community leaders here, saying we need to come to the table together, and that you need to make sure you demonstrate that these positions work before you fund them, and that it's going to need to be a group effort to do that.
Additional questions or comments? Is there a motion of support?
I would move a
Second.
motion for approval.
I have a motion and a second to approve the grant application. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Aaron, for coming back and running to Lincoln County and everything you did in the last 2 hours. Is there any new business? Is there any old business? Okay, I would just, for a little bit of direction, we are going to be doing budget hearings today, and so we're running a little behind what we anticipated. So I would say let's take a 10-minute break. That gets us back at 11:40, and we will start with the presentations that we have, which we anticipate will hopefully be less than an hour, and then we will take a abbreviated lunch break, and we will come back. It might not be 1 o'clock now. We intended to start at 1. We'll just have to see how that works, if we can start at 1 or not. So there will be no exec session today, so I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned 10 minutes.